The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Bragg's training grounds as Colonel Marcus Steele reviewed the day's schedule. 23 years of military service had taught him to expect the unexpected, but nothing could have prepared him for what walked through his office door that Tuesday morning. Sarah Chen was 12 years old, barely reaching the colonel's chest, with bright eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the military memorabilia lining his walls. Her father, Master Sergeant David Chen, stood beside her with the kind of rigid posture that spoke of decades in the service. "Sir, I know this is unusual," Sergeant Chen began, his voice steady despite the obvious tension in his shoulders. "My daughter has been asking about the shooting range for months. She's been practicing with my old .22 at home, and she's showing real talent." Colonel Steele studied the small girl who stood at perfect attention despite having no military training. Her civilian clothes looked out of place in his office, but there was something in her stance that reminded him of seasoned soldiers. "How old did you say she was?" 12, sir," Sarah answered for herself, her voice clear and confident. "I know I'm young, but I can shoot better than most adults. My dad taught me safety first, then accuracy. I practice every day after school." The colonel had seen plenty of military children over the years. Base life created kids who matured faster than their peers, who understood discipline and respect in ways that often surprised civilians. But this was different. This little girl was asking to train on military ranges, to compete against Navy SEALs and Army Rangers. "Sarah, do you understand what you're asking for?" Colonel Steele sat down, bringing himself closer to her eye level. "Our training programs are designed for grown men and women who have dedicated their lives to military service. The physical demands alone would be challenging for someone your age." Sarah's expression never wavered. "Sir, I'm not asking to become a soldier. I'm asking for a chance to show what I can do. My dad says the best way to earn respect is through action, not words." Master Sergeant Chen stepped forward slightly. "Colonel, I've been training elite soldiers for 15 years. I've seen natural talent, and I've seen dedication. My daughter has both. She outshot me last week with my service pistol, and I'm still ranked expert marksman." The colonel raised an eyebrow. David Chen was indeed an expert marksman, one of the best instructors on base. If he was vouching for his daughter's abilities, that carried significant weight. "Even if she has natural talent," Colonel Steele said carefully, "there are regulations, safety protocols, insurance concerns. We can't just let civilians, especially children, onto active training ranges. What if we made it official?" Sarah asked, her voice taking on a tone that reminded the colonel uncomfortably of his own daughter when she was determined about something. "What if I could prove I belong here?" The colonel found himself studying the girl more closely. There was something in her eyes that he'd seen before in his best soldiers, a quiet confidence that came not from arrogance but from genuine competence. It was rare in adults and almost unheard of in children. "Sarah, let's say I was willing to consider this," he said slowly. "What exactly are you proposing?" Without hesitation, she replied, "Give me a test. Set up whatever challenge you think is fair. If I fail, I'll accept that I'm not ready and wait until I'm older. But if I succeed, let me train with your best shooters." The audacity of it should have been amusing, but Colonel Steele found himself impressed instead of dismissive. This 12-year-old girl was negotiating with him like a seasoned professional. Master Sergeant Chen spoke up again. "Sir, I understand the concerns about liability and protocol. But I've arranged for private range time, and I'll take full responsibility for her safety and supervision. This isn't about circumventing regulations. It's about recognizing exceptional ability when we see it." Colonel Steele leaned back in his chair, considering. He'd built his career on identifying and developing talent, regardless of where it came from. Some of his best soldiers had been written off by other commanders as too young, too small, or too unconventional. "What kind of shooting are we talking about?" he asked finally. Sarah's eyes lit up. "Precision rifle work mostly, but I'm also good with pistols. I can hit targets at ranges most people would consider impossible for someone my age. I understand windage, elevation, breathing control, trigger discipline. My dad made sure I learned the science behind shooting, not just the mechanics." The colonel looked at Master Sergeant Chen, who nodded confirmation. "She's not exaggerating, sir. Last weekend, she made a shot at 800 yards with my hunting rifle. Cold bore, first shot, perfect center mass on a 6-inch target. 800 yards was impressive for anyone, let alone a 12-year-old girl. Colonel Steele had seen grown soldiers struggle with half that distance. "There's something else," Sarah added quietly. "I know everyone thinks I'm just a little girl playing with guns. I've heard what people say when they think I can't hear them. But shooting isn't about being big or strong. It's about control, patience, and understanding your equipment. Those are things anyone can learn if they're willing to work hard enough." The colonel recognized the tone. It was the same quiet determination he'd heard from soldiers who went on to achieve extraordinary things, usually after being underestimated by everyone around them. "All right," he said finally. "Here's what we'll do. I'll arrange for a private evaluation session. Nothing official, no records, no publicity. You'll shoot against some of our best marksmen under controlled conditions. If you can hold your own, we'll talk about what comes next." Sarah's face broke into the first smile she'd shown since entering his office. "Thank you, sir. You won't regret this." "I'd better not," Colonel Steele replied, but his tone was softer than his words. "Sergeant Chen, coordinate with the range master. I want this done properly, with full safety protocols and medical support on standby." As father and daughter prepared to leave, Colonel Steele called out, "Sarah." She turned back to face him. "What made you want to do this?" "Really?" For the first time, Sarah looked her age, vulnerability flickering across her features before being replaced by that same quiet determination. "My mom died 2 years ago. Cancer. Before she died, she made me promise to never let anyone tell me I couldn't do something just because I was small or young or different. She said the world needed people who could hit targets other people couldn't even see." The office fell silent. Colonel Steele had lost soldiers under his command, had delivered death notifications to families, but something about this 12-year-old girl's simple statement of purpose hit him differently. "Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman," he said finally. "She was," Sarah replied. "She was also a better shot than my dad, but he won't admit it." Master Sergeant Chen's face reddened slightly, but he was smiling. "That's classified information, young lady." As they left his office, Colonel Steele found himself looking forward to the evaluation session with an anticipation he hadn't felt in years. If Sarah Chen was even half as good as her father claimed, this could be very interesting indeed. The next morning, word had somehow spread through the base that something unusual was happening at Range 7. Colonel Steele arrived to find a small crowd of off-duty soldiers gathered at a respectful distance, curious about the civilian vehicle parked outside the range facility. Range Master Gunnery Sergeant Patricia Williams had prepared meticulously for the session. Safety barriers were in place, medical personnel were on standby, and she'd selected a variety of weapons and distances to provide a comprehensive evaluation. "Sir," Gunny Williams approached as Colonel Steele surveyed the setup. "I've got to ask, are we really doing this? Testing a 12-year-old civilian on military ranges?" "We're evaluating potential," Colonel Steele replied. "Age is just a number if the fundamentals are solid." Sarah arrived with her father at exactly 0800 hours, punctual in a way that impressed the soldiers present. She'd traded her civilian clothes for practical shooting attire, complete with proper eye and ear protection. "Good morning, Colonel," she said formally, then addressed Gunny Williams. "Range Master, thank you for accommodating this evaluation." Gunny Williams blinked, clearly not expecting such professional courtesy from a child. "Well, good morning. Are you ready to begin?" "Yes, ma'am." The first test was basic marksmanship with a standard M4 rifle at 100 yards. Sarah approached the firing line with the kind of calm focus that veteran soldiers spend years developing. She checked the weapon systematically, adjusted the sights, and settled into a prone position that looked textbook perfect. The watching soldiers fell silent as she chambered around and took aim. Her breathing was controlled, her grip steady, and, when she fired, the sound seemed to hang in the morning air. "Target, let me see that shot," Gunny Williams called. The range assistant ran the target back, and, even from a distance, they could see the bullet hole in the center ring. Not just in the center, but precisely in the middle of the X-ring. "Beginner's luck," someone muttered from the crowd. Sarah fired 4 more rounds, each one grouping tightly around her first shot. When the target came back, the 5 shots formed a cluster that could have been covered by a quarter. "Jesus," one of the soldiers whispered. Gunny Williams studied the target, then looked at Sarah with new interest. "That's solid shooting.
Let's try something more challenging.
The next test moved to 300 yards with iron sights. The wind had picked up slightly, and even experienced marksmen would need to account for its effect on their shots. Sarah studied the wind flags for several minutes before taking her position. She made a slight adjustment to her sight settings, chambered around, and prepared to fire. This time, her shots came more slowly, each one preceded by careful observation of wind conditions and target analysis. When the target was retrieved, her 5-shot group was still impressively tight, centered in the scoring ring.
How did you learn to read wind like that? Gunny Williams asked.
My dad taught me to watch the grass, the flags, and the heat shimmer, Sarah replied.
But, mostly, it's about patience. You wait for the conditions you want instead of fighting the conditions you have.
Colonel Steele found himself nodding. That was the kind of tactical thinking that separated good shooters from exceptional ones. Range master, he called out.
Let's see how she handles stress.
Gunny Williams set up a timed course of fire with multiple targets at varying distances. Sarah would have 60 seconds to engage 6 targets, ranging from 50 to 400 yards, using different shooting positions for each. This was where most recreational shooters would struggle. The time pressure, combined with the need to rapidly transition between targets and positions, tested both skill and mental composure. Sarah listened carefully as Gunny Williams explained the course, asked 2 clarifying questions about target order, then nodded her readiness.
Shooter ready? Gunny Williams called. Ready. Stand by. Begin.
Sarah moved with surprising efficiency, flowing from standing to kneeling to prone as she engaged each target in sequence. Her movements were economical, wasting no motion, and her shots came at a steady rhythm that spoke of confidence rather than haste. When the timer sounded, she immediately made her weapon safe and stood, waiting for the targets to be scored.
All hits, the range assistant called out. 5 out of 6 are center mass or better. The crowd of watching soldiers was no longer making casual comments.
Even the most skeptical among them had to acknowledge what they were seeing.
Outstanding, Colonel Steele said, and meant it. Sarah, how long have you been shooting?
3 years seriously, sir. But my mom started teaching me gun safety when I was 7. 3 years. Colonel Steele had soldiers who'd been shooting for a decade and couldn't match what this girl had just demonstrated.
There's one more test, he said. If you're willing. Sarah nodded without hesitation. Gunny Williams set up the long-range course. 800 yards.
A murmur went through the crowd. 800 yards was serious distance shooting, the kind of range where atmospheric conditions, bullet drop, and minute angles of adjustment all became critical factors. Sir, Master Sergeant Chen spoke up for the first time since the evaluation began. She's never shot at that distance under evaluation conditions.
She's shot it in practice though? Colonel Steele asked. Yes, sir. Successfully. Then, let's see if practice translates to performance under pressure.
The 800-yard range required a different setup, with spotting scopes and more sophisticated target systems. As the range crew prepared the equipment, Colonel Steele noticed that word of the evaluation had spread even further. Senior NCOs and officers were now among the spectators, drawn by curiosity about the young civilian who was reportedly outperforming trained soldiers.
Sarah spent the preparation time studying the environmental conditions.
She checked wind indicators at multiple points downrange, analyzed the light conditions, and made calculations in a small notebook she brought with her. Taking this seriously, observed Command Sergeant Major Rodriguez, who'd arrived to see what was drawing such attention. She's been taking it seriously from the beginning, Colonel Steele replied. Look at her preparation routine.
That's not something you can fake.
When the range was ready, Sarah selected a precision rifle from the available options, spent several minutes familiarizing herself with its particular characteristics, and made her sight adjustments based on her environmental observations. The target at 800 yards was barely visible to the naked eye, a small black dot against the hillside backdrop. Success at this distance required not just marksmanship skill but an understanding of ballistics that many soldiers never fully developed. Sarah settled into her shooting position with the same calm focus she'd displayed throughout the evaluation. She spent a full minute in position before taking her first shot, confirming her sight picture and breathing pattern. The shot echoed across the range, and everyone waited for the spotter's call.
Hit. Center ring.
The second shot came 2 minutes later, after Sarah had observed wind changes and made a slight adjustment to her point of aim.
Hit. Still center mass.
By her fifth shot, the crowd had grown silent with respect rather than curiosity. When the target was retrieved and displayed, Sarah's 5-shot group at 800 yards was tighter than many soldiers could achieve at half that distance. Colonel Steele found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about military training and natural ability. This 12-year-old girl had just outshot some of his best marksmen at distances that challenged even elite soldiers. "Sarah," he called out as she cleared her weapon and stepped back from the firing line.
"Yes, sir?" "Tomorrow morning, 0600 hours. We're going to have a conversation about what comes next."
The base buzzed with conversations about the previous day's demonstration. Word had spread through the unofficial channels that always carried news faster than official communications.
A 12-year-old civilian had outshot seasoned soldiers at distances most people couldn't even see clearly.
Colonel Steele arrived at his office before dawn, coffee in hand, reviewing the official reports from Range Master Williams.
The numbers didn't lie.
Sarah Chen had achieved scores that would qualify her as expert marksman in any branch of the military. More importantly, she'd done it under pressure, with dozens of skeptical soldiers watching her every move.
At precisely 0600 hours, Sarah knocked on his door.
She was accompanied not just by her father, but also by Command Sergeant Major Rodriguez and Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Hayes, the base's operations officer. "Come in," Colonel Steele called, unsurprised by the expanded group. Yesterday's demonstration had attracted attention from throughout the command structure. Sarah entered first, moving with the same quiet confidence she'd displayed on the range. Despite her age, she seemed completely comfortable in the presence of senior military officers. "Sir," she said formally, Master Sergeant Chen reporting with his daughter as requested.
"At ease, everyone. Please, sit down."
Colonel Steele gestured to the chairs arranged around his conference table.
"Sarah, yesterday was impressive. But I need to understand what you're hoping to achieve here."
Sarah looked directly at him when she answered, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment.
"Sir, I want to become the best marksman I can be.
I want to learn from people who understand precision shooting at the highest level. And I want to prove that ability matters more than assumptions." "Those are admirable goals," Lieutenant Colonel Hayes interjected.
"But military training programs aren't designed for civilians, especially young ones. There are legal considerations, safety protocols, insurance regulations."
"Ma'am, with respect," Sarah replied, "I'm not asking to become a soldier.
I'm asking for access to training that will make me better at something I'm already good at. If age is the only barrier, then we're saying potential doesn't matter as much as the calendar."
Command Sergeant Major Rodriguez leaned forward, studying Sarah with interest. "Young lady, what makes you think you can handle training alongside Navy SEALs and Army Rangers? These are elite soldiers who've spent years developing their skills under extreme conditions."
"Sergeant Major, yesterday I shot better scores than most of them at 800 yards, Sarah said simply. "I'm not saying I'm better than they are at everything.
But, at precision marksmanship, I can compete with anyone."
The quiet confidence in her statement wasn't arrogance.
It was the kind of factual assessment that military leaders were trained to recognize and respect. Colonel Steele had spent the previous evening making phone calls, checking regulations, and exploring possibilities. "Sarah, if we were to move forward with some kind of training arrangement, it would have to be completely unofficial.
No records, no recognition, no publicity. Are you willing to work twice as hard as everyone else for none of the credit?"
"Yes, sir." "You'd be training with people who might resent your presence, who might try to prove you don't belong there."
"Can you handle that kind of pressure?"
"I've been handling that kind of pressure my whole life, sir. Being small and young and different means people always assume you can't do things."
"I'm used to proving them wrong." Master Sergeant Chen spoke for the first time since entering the office. "Colonel, if I may. My daughter understands what she's asking for. She's not looking for special treatment or accommodation. She wants to be held to the same standards as everyone else." Lieutenant Colonel Hayes reviewed the documents in front of her.
"Even if we could work out the legal aspects, there's the question of what this accomplishes.
Sarah is 12 years old.
She can't enlist for another 6 years.
What's the long-term plan here?" Sarah answered without hesitation. "Ma'am, I want to compete.
national-level competitions, international events if I'm good enough.
But, more than that, I want to understand what's possible when someone commits completely to excellence. Military trainers understand that better than civilian instructors.
Command Sergeant Major Rodriguez nodded slowly.
That's a mature perspective for someone your age. But, competition shooting is very different from tactical shooting.
Different skills, different pressures. Which is why I need to learn both, Sarah replied.
Competition shooting teaches precision under artificial pressure.
Tactical shooting teaches precision under real pressure.
I want to understand the complete spectrum.
Colonel Steele found himself impressed not just by her answers, but by the thoughtful way she'd clearly prepared for this conversation. This wasn't a child asking for special privileges. This was someone with a clear vision of what she wanted to achieve.
There's another factor to consider, he said. Military training isn't just about marksmanship.
It's about discipline, teamwork, physical conditioning, mental toughness.
Are you prepared for all of that?
Sir, I run 5 miles every morning before school. I do 2 hours of physical training every evening. My grades are straight A's because my parents taught me that excellence in one area doesn't excuse mediocrity in others. As for discipline and teamwork, I'll learn what I need to learn.
The room fell silent as the officers processed her response.
Finally, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes spoke up.
Colonel, assuming we could address the legal and safety concerns, what exactly are you proposing? Colonel Steele had been considering this question all night. A pilot program.
Completely unofficial, designed to evaluate whether exceptional civilian marksmen can benefit from military-style precision training.
Sarah would be our test case. What would the training involve? Master Sergeant Chen asked.
Advanced marksmanship techniques, ballistics theory, environmental considerations, equipment optimization, stress shooting, team tactics. Essentially, everything we teach our scout snipers except for the combat applications.
Sarah's eyes lit up with interest. Would I train with actual scout snipers? If you prove you can handle the basic curriculum, yes.
But, understand, these are elite soldiers who've earned their positions through years of training and real-world experience. They won't go easy on you because of your age.
I wouldn't want them to. Command Sergeant Major Rodriguez studied Sarah carefully. Young lady, do you understand what you'd be getting into?
Military training is designed to break people down and build them back up.
It's physically demanding, mentally challenging, and emotionally exhausting.
And you'd be doing it while still going to school and living a normal life.
Sergeant Major, my life hasn't been normal since my mother died. I've learned that normal is overrated compared to purposeful.
The weight of that statement settled over the room.
Colonel Steele realized that Sarah's motivation went deeper than simple ambition or competitive drive.
This was about honoring her mother's memory and fulfilling a promise that had shaped her entire approach to life.
All right, he said finally. Here's what we'll do. 2-week trial period.
You'll train with our advanced marksmanship instructors for 2 hours every day after school.
Weekends will include longer sessions with more comprehensive curriculum. If you can maintain your academic performance while meeting our training standards, we'll discuss a longer-term arrangement.
Sarah sat up straighter, if that was possible.
Thank you, sir. What are the standards I need to meet? Physical fitness benchmarks appropriate for your age group.
Marksmanship scores that place you in the top 10% of our advanced students.
Perfect attendance and punctuality.
Demonstration of coachability and team integration. And, most importantly, proof that this training is making you better without compromising your development as a normal teenager.
I understand, sir. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes looked concerned. Colonel, what about the other students? How do we manage the integration of a civilian, especially a young one, into military training programs?
That's part of what we're testing, Colonel Steele replied. If our training methods are as good as we think they are, they should work regardless of the student's background. And if our soldiers are as professional as they claim to be, they should be able to recognize and respect ability when they see it.
Master Sergeant Chan raised his hand slightly. Sir, what about equipment?
Sarah has her own rifles and gear, but military training might require specialized equipment.
We'll provide whatever she needs for training purposes.
But, Sarah, you'll be responsible for maintaining and caring for any equipment assigned to you according to military standards.
Yes, sir. I understand. Command Sergeant Major Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, still studying Sarah. I've got one more question. What happens if you wash out? What happens if you discover that this is harder than you expected? Sarah met his gaze directly.
Then, I'll know I gave my best effort and wasn't quite ready.
But I'll keep training until I am ready. This isn't about proving something to other people anymore. It's about proving something to myself. The honesty of her answer impressed everyone in the room. This wasn't false bravado or childhood stubbornness. This was genuine determination backed by realistic self-assessment. When do we start? Sarah asked.
Tomorrow, 1,500 hours, Colonel Steele replied. Report to the Advanced Marksmanship Facility. Your first instructor will be Gunnery Sergeant Williams. She's tough, fair, and doesn't care about anything except results. I remember her from yesterday. She seems like exactly the kind of instructor I need. As the meeting broke up, Colonel Steele pulled Sarah aside.
One more thing.
This arrangement stays between us and the people directly involved in your training.
No social media, no interviews, no publicity of any kind. Is that understood?
Yes, sir.
This isn't about attention. It's about improvement.
After everyone else had left, Colonel Steele found himself alone with Master Sergeant Chun.
David, are you sure about this?
We're talking about putting your daughter into an environment designed for adults, with people who might not appreciate her presence.
Master Sergeant Chen was quiet for a moment before responding.
Sir, my daughter has been dealing with people who don't appreciate her presence her whole life. She's small, she's Asian American, and she's a girl in a culture that still sometimes thinks those are disadvantages. But she's also the most determined person I've ever met, and she's got natural ability that can't be taught.
What would her mother think about this?
Sir, my wife believed that talent was a responsibility, not just a gift. She taught Sarah that if you're good at something important, you owe it to yourself and the world to see how good you can become. I think she'd be proud that Sarah is taking that lesson seriously. That afternoon, Colonel Steele found himself at the Advanced Marksmanship Facility, ostensibly reviewing training protocols but actually curious to see how Sarah would handle her first real military training session. Gunnery Sergeant Williams had set up a comprehensive evaluation course that would test not just marksmanship but also tactical thinking, equipment management, and stress response. Sarah arrived 15 minutes early, properly dressed and equipped, and immediately began familiarizing herself with the facility layout.
Shun!
Gunny Williams called out in the tone that had intimidated countless soldiers over the years.
Yes, Gunnery Sergeant. You think because you can shoot, you're ready for military training? No, Gunnery Sergeant.
I think because I can shoot, I'm ready to learn military training. Williams paused, clearly not expecting that answer.
Drop and give me 20 push-ups. Sarah immediately dropped into position and executed 20 perfect push-ups without complaint or hesitation. Why didn't you ask me why you had to do push-ups? Because you're the instructor, Gunnery Sergeant. When I understand your training methods better, I'll understand why you gave that order. Williams looked genuinely surprised. You've never done military training before?
No, Gunnery Sergeant, but my father taught me that questioning orders comes after proving you can follow them.
Outstanding. Let's see if you shoot as well as you think.
What followed was 2 hours of intensive training that covered advanced shooting positions, rapid target acquisition, environmental compensation, and stress shooting. Sarah absorbed every lesson, asked intelligent questions, and adapted quickly to new techniques. More importantly, she never complained, never made excuses, and never asked for special consideration because of her age or size. Not bad for a civilian, Williams commented as they finished the session.
Report tomorrow at the same time. We'll see if you can maintain this performance when the training gets harder.
As Sarah packed up her gear, she noticed Colonel Steele observing from a distance. She approached and stood at attention.
Sir, permission to speak freely? Granted. This is exactly what I hoped it would be. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Don't thank me yet, Sarah. This was just the introduction. The real training starts tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
I'll be ready.
As he watched her leave with her father, Colonel Steele realized that his biggest challenge wouldn't be determining whether Sarah could handle military training. It would be convincing his soldiers that sometimes the most unlikely students could teach them something about dedication and excellence. 3 weeks into the training program, Sarah had become something of a legend among the base's shooting instructors. Not because she was a 12-year-old girl in military training, but because she consistently outperformed expectations while never asking for special treatment. Gunnery Sergeant Williams had initially planned to ease Sarah into the program gradually, but quickly discovered that the girl could handle whatever was thrown at her. Today's session would be her most challenging yet, training alongside actual Navy SEALs who were completing advanced sniper school.
"Chen, you ready for this?" Williams asked as they prepared for the morning session. "Ready, Gunnery Sergeant. These aren't regular soldiers you'll be training with today. These are SEALs. They've been through the toughest military training in the world, and they're not here to babysit a civilian kid." "I understand, Gunnery Sergeant. I'm not here to be babysat." Williams nodded approvingly. Over the past weeks, Sarah had proven herself capable of matching pace with advanced military students while maintaining the humble professionalism that marked truly elite performers. The SEAL team arrived at 0500 hours, 5 seasoned operators led by Chief Petty Officer Marcus Thompson. Thompson was a legendary figure in special operations, with multiple deployments and a reputation for producing some of the Navy's best snipers. "Gunny, what's the story with the kid?" Thompson asked quietly, nodding toward Sarah as she methodically checked her equipment. "That's Sarah Chen. She's been training with us for 3 weeks. Best natural marksman I've seen in 20 years of instruction." Thompson studied Sarah with professional interest. "Natural talent is nice, but this is about precision under pressure. How does she handle stress?" "Better than most of your guys, probably." The comment was made casually, but Thompson caught the underlying challenge. "We'll see about that." The day's training began with classroom instruction on advanced ballistics calculations. Sarah sat among the 5 SEALs, taking notes and asking questions that demonstrated not just intelligence but genuine understanding of complex mathematical concepts. "Chen," Chief Thompson called out during a discussion of atmospheric effects on long-range shooting. "How do you calculate the effect of humidity on bullet trajectory at 1500 yards? Without hesitation, Sarah began working through the calculation on the whiteboard, explaining each step clearly and arriving at the correct answer. The SEALs watched with growing interest as this 12-year-old civilian demonstrated mastery of concepts that challenged experienced operators. "Outstanding," Thompson said, genuine respect creeping into his voice. "Where did you learn ballistics theory?" "Books, online courses, and practical experimentation, Chief. My father taught me that understanding the science makes you better at the art." The classroom session moved to the range for practical application. The targets were set at varying distances from 800 to 1200 yards, with environmental conditions that would challenge even expert marksmen. "First exercise," Chief Thompson announced, "is cold bore shooting. 1 shot, 1 target, no practice rounds. Distance is 1000 yards, wind is variable, and you get 5 minutes to analyze conditions and take your shot." The SEALs went first, each one taking their time to study conditions before settling into position. Their shots were good, all within the scoring ring, with 2 achieving near-perfect center hits. Sarah went last, spending her full 5 minutes analyzing wind indicators, light conditions, and target characteristics. When she finally took her position, her movements were deliberate and confident. Her shot echoed across the range, and everyone waited for the spotter's call. Perfect center hit. The SEALs looked at each other with newfound respect. Cold bore shooting was one of the most challenging tests of marksmanship skill, requiring perfect calculation and flawless execution with no room for correction. "Not bad for a civilian," Petty Officer First Class Rodriguez commented, but his tone was approving rather than dismissive. The training continued with increasingly complex scenarios designed to test both technical skill and mental composure. Sarah matched the SEALs shot for shot, never complaining about the difficulty or asking for easier challenges. During the lunch break, Chief Thompson approached Colonel Steele, who had come to observe the session. "Sir, I need to understand what's happening here. That girl is shooting better than some of my best snipers, and she's doing it with equipment she's barely familiar with, in conditions she's never trained in before." "What's your assessment, Chief?" "Honestly? She's got natural ability I've never seen before, combined with a work ethic and mental toughness that would impress anyone in special operations. But, more than that, she's got something most operators take years to develop." "Which is?" Complete emotional control under pressure.
No nerves, no self-doubt, no distraction. She analyzes, decides, and executes without hesitation.
That's not just skill, sir. That's combat mindset.
Colonel Steele had been observing the same things, but hearing it from someone of Chief Thompson's caliber carried additional weight.
What do you recommend? Full integration into advanced training.
She can handle anything we throw at her, and, honestly, my guys are learning from watching her approach to problem solving. The afternoon session focused on team tactics and communication. This was where Sarah's age and civilian background could potentially become disadvantages, as military teamwork required different skills than individual marksmanship. The exercise involved multiple shooters engaging targets simultaneously while communicating through radio headsets and coordinating their actions with ground units. Sarah was paired with Petty Officer Rodriguez as her spotter.
Chen, you ever done team shooting before?
Rodriguez asked as they prepared for the exercise.
No, but I understand the concepts. Communication, timing, and trust, right? That's the basics.
But, when it gets complex, you need to be able to think like your partner, anticipate their needs, and execute without questioning orders.
I can do that.
The exercise began with a scenario involving multiple high-value targets at various distances, requiring precise timing to prevent any target from escaping or calling for reinforcement. Sarah's role was primary shooter, with Rodriguez providing range calculations and target priority.
As the scenario unfolded, Sarah demonstrated an intuitive understanding of team dynamics that surprised everyone involved. She followed Rodriguez's guidance without question, made accurate shots under time pressure, and adapted quickly when circumstances changed.
Target down, moving to secondary, she reported calmly through her radio.
Copy, secondary target is mobile, range 1200, windage left 3, Rodriguez responded. Roger, engaging secondary.
Her shot took down the moving target cleanly, and the exercise continued without pause. By the end of the scenario, Sarah and Rodriguez had achieved perfect scores while demonstrating the kind of seamless teamwork that typically took months to develop.
How did you learn to communicate like that? Rodriguez asked afterward.
I listen carefully and think before I speak, Sarah replied. Plus, I trust that you know what you're doing, so I don't waste time second-guessing your instructions. Chief Thompson gathered the group for debrief, a standard military practice for analyzing performance and identifying lessons learned. Overall assessment, he began, is that this was excellent shooting combined with solid tactical thinking.
Chen, you integrated into team operations better than most new operators. What's your background in tactical communication?
None, Chief. But, my father taught me that following good leadership makes everyone better, and questioning good leadership makes everyone worse.
Outstanding attitude. Rodriguez, how was she as a shooting partner?
Chief, she was easier to work with than some guys I've been paired with for years. No ego, no arguing, just focus on the mission. The other SEALs nodded agreement. In a culture where earning respect required proving yourself under the most demanding conditions, Sarah had done exactly that without fanfare or self-promotion. As the day concluded, Chief Thompson approached Sarah directly.
Chen, you've got natural ability that can't be taught.
But, more than that, you've got the mindset and work ethic that separate good shooters from great ones.
Have you ever considered military service?
Thank you, Chief. I have considered it, but I'm also interested in competition shooting and, possibly law enforcement. I want to explore all the ways I can use these skills to serve others.
Smart approach. Keep your options open.
But, understand that what you accomplished today would be impressive for anyone, regardless of age or experience level. After the SEALs departed, Colonel Steele found Sarah cleaning her equipment with the same methodical attention to detail she brought to everything else. How do you feel about today's training? He asked.
Challenging and educational, sir.
I learned that team shooting requires different mental skills than individual shooting, but the fundamental principles remain the same. The SEALs were impressed with your performance.
They're excellent instructors, sir.
Working with professionals of their caliber makes me want to improve even more. Colonel Steele studied this remarkable young woman who continued to exceed every expectation while maintaining the humility that marked truly exceptional people.
Sarah, we need to discuss what comes next.
You've proven that you can handle advanced military training, but we need to consider long-term goals and planning.
I've been thinking about that too, sir.
I'd like to continue training here as long as possible, but I also want to start competing in civilian marksmanship competitions. I think the combination of military precision training and competition experience would make me better at both.
That's a mature perspective. What kind of competitions are you considering?
National junior championships to start, with the goal of eventually competing internationally. But I want to make sure that competition shooting enhances my tactical training rather than replacing it.
Colonel Steele found himself continually impressed by Sarah's thoughtful approach to her development. She wasn't just talented, she was strategic about maximizing her potential while maintaining balance in her life. There's something else to consider, he said. Your presence here has had an unexpected effect on our regular training programs. What kind of effect, sir? Our soldiers are working harder, asking better questions, and showing more dedication to excellence. Watching a 12-year-old civilian outperform some of our best shooters has reminded everyone that achievement comes from effort, not entitlement. Sarah looked genuinely surprised. I never intended to influence anyone else's training, sir. I just wanted to improve myself. That's exactly why your influence has been positive. Excellence inspires excellence, especially when it's combined with humility and hard work. As they walked back toward the base administrative area, Colonel Steele reflected on the broader implications of Sarah's success. Military training had always been designed for specific populations under specific circumstances. But Sarah was proving that exceptional ability could emerge from unexpected sources and thrive under the right conditions. Sir, Sarah said as they reached the parking area where her father was waiting. Tomorrow is Saturday. Are there additional training opportunities available on weekends? What did you have in mind? I'd like to work on long-range precision shooting. Chief Thompson mentioned that the base has ranges out to 2,000 yards, and I've never shot at that distance before. Colonel Steele smiled. 3 weeks ago, he'd been skeptical about allowing a civilian child to train on military ranges. Now he was looking forward to seeing what this remarkable young woman could accomplish at distances that challenged even elite snipers. Report to Range 12 at 0600 hours. We'll see how you handle the real long-distance work. Thank you, sir. I'll be ready. 6 months had passed since Sarah Chan first walked into Colonel Steele's office asking for a chance to prove herself. What began as an unusual request from a determined 12-year-old had evolved into something unprecedented in military training history. The morning sun cast long shadows across the advanced sniper range as Sarah prepared for what would be her final evaluation before transitioning to a new phase of her development. Word had spread throughout the special operations community about the civilian girl who could outshoot seasoned professionals, and today's observers included some of the military's most elite marksmen. Colonel Steele arrived to find Sarah already at the range, methodically preparing her equipment with the same attention to detail that had impressed every instructor she'd worked with. At 13 now, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had repeatedly proven her abilities under the most demanding conditions. "Good morning, Sarah," he said, approaching her preparation area. "Good morning, Colonel. Thank you for arranging today's evaluation." Over the past months, their relationship had evolved from cautious accommodation to genuine mutual respect. Colonel Steele had watched Sarah grow not just as a marksman, but as a young woman whose character had been shaped by military discipline and the pursuit of excellence. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, gesturing toward the assembled group of observers. "Yes, sir. I've been preparing for this evaluation for weeks." The final test would be comprehensive, covering every aspect of precision marksmanship that Sarah had learned during her time in the program. But, more than technical skill, today would test her ability to perform under the kind of pressure that came from knowing that her entire future might depend on the outcome. Chief Petty Officer Thompson approached, carrying a folder containing the day's schedule. Over the months, he had become not just an instructor but something approaching a mentor to Sarah, recognizing in her the kind of natural ability that appeared once in a generation. "Shen, you understand what today represents?" he asked. "Yes, Chief. It's my opportunity to demonstrate everything I've learned and prove that I'm ready for the next level of training. More than that. Today determines whether this experimental program continues, whether other exceptional young people get the same opportunities you've had, and whether the military reconsiders how it identifies and develops talent." The weight of that responsibility would have crushed many adults, but Sarah simply nodded her understanding. "I won't let anyone down, Chief.
The evaluation began with a written examination covering ballistics theory, environmental calculations, equipment specifications, and tactical principles. Sarah completed it in half the allotted time, demonstrating mastery of concepts that challenged graduate-level physics students. Next came equipment inspection and maintenance, areas where military standards demanded perfection. Sarah's rifle was immaculate, her gear was properly organized, and her maintenance log showed the kind of meticulous record-keeping that marked professional operators. The practical shooting began with standard distances and gradually progressed to extreme-range work. At each stage, Sarah's performance exceeded the standards required for military sniper qualification, but what impressed observers most was her consistency under increasing pressure.
Target at 1,800 yards, announced the range officer. Wind conditions variable, light conditions changing. Single shot, cold bore.
1,800 yards was beyond the effective range of standard military rifles, requiring specialized equipment and calculations that pushed the limits of both technology and human skill. Sarah had trained at this distance only twice before, both times under ideal conditions. She spent 15 minutes analyzing the environment, making calculations, and preparing her equipment. When she finally settled into position, the entire range fell silent. Her shot echoed across the mountains, and everyone waited for the spotter's confirmation. Perfect center hit. The assembled observers erupted in quiet applause, the kind of professional appreciation that marked recognition among peers rather than surprise at an unexpected achievement. But the most challenging part of the evaluation was yet to come. "Chen, report to the scenario range," Chief Thompson called out. The scenario range was designed to simulate real-world conditions where precision shooting might be required. Unlike the controlled environment of standard marksmanship tests, this facility presented complex tactical situations requiring rapid decision-making under pressure. Sarah entered a room configured to simulate an urban environment, with multiple potential targets at various distances and angles.
Some targets represented threats that needed to be neutralized, others represented civilians who must not be harmed.
Success required not just accurate shooting, but perfect judgment under time pressure.
"You have 30 seconds to analyze the scenario," the controller announced.
"Then, you'll have 2 minutes to engage all appropriate targets while avoiding civilian casualties." Sarah studied the layout with the same systematic approach she brought to everything else, identifying threats, calculating angles, and planning her engagement sequence. When the clock started, she moved with fluid efficiency, engaging targets in order of priority while maintaining perfect accuracy. When the exercise ended, she had achieved perfect scores on both accuracy and judgment, demonstrating the kind of tactical thinking that separated recreational shooters from true professionals. The final phase of the evaluation was perhaps the most important, a comprehensive interview with senior military leaders about her goals, her understanding of responsibility, and her plans for the future. "Sarah," General Patricia Martinez began, "you've demonstrated exceptional ability over the past 6 months. But ability without character is dangerous. How do you view the responsibility that comes with your skills?"
"Ma'am, my mother taught me that talent is a gift, but using it properly is a choice.
I understand that precision shooting skills could be used to harm people or to protect them. I want to use mine to protect people and serve something larger than myself."
"What specifically does that mean to you?" "It means continuing to train so I can compete at the highest levels and represent American marksmanship internationally. It means considering military service when I'm old enough.
It means possibly pursuing law enforcement or other careers where these skills serve the public good." General Martinez studied Sarah carefully. "You're 13 years old.
How do you handle the pressure of being seen as exceptional?"
"Ma'am, I try to remember that being good at shooting doesn't make me better than anyone else as a person. It just means I have a responsibility to work harder and set a good example.
There are lots of ways to serve others and contribute to society. This is just my way."
The interview continued for an hour, covering everything from academic performance to personal relationships to long-term career planning.
Throughout, Sarah demonstrated the kind of mature thinking and ethical grounding that impressed even skeptical observers.
When the formal evaluation concluded, Colonel Steele found himself facing a decision that would have implications far beyond Sarah's individual case. The success of this experimental program had attracted attention from the highest levels of military leadership, with some advocating for expansion and others expressing concerns about setting precedents. "Sarah," he said as they reviewed the day's results, "your performance today exceeded every benchmark we established. You've proven that exceptional ability can thrive under military training standards regardless of age or background.
Thank you, sir. What happens next? That's complicated.
Your success has opened doors that didn't exist 6 months ago, but it's also raised questions about how the military identifies and develops talent.
Colonel Steele had spent weeks considering the broader implications of Sarah's achievements.
Traditional military training models were based on assumptions about age, experience, and background that her success had challenged.
There are several paths forward, he continued.
You could continue training here while competing in civilian competitions.
You could transition to specialized coaching with Olympic-level instructors.
You could focus on academic development while maintaining your skills through periodic training sessions.
What do you recommend, sir? I recommend that you continue doing what you've been doing.
Train hard, compete when possible, maintain your academic excellence, and remember that your greatest achievement isn't your shooting ability, it's the character you've developed while pursuing excellence. As the day concluded, Sarah found herself surrounded by military professionals who had become not just instructors but mentors and friends. Chief Thompson approached with something he'd been working on for weeks.
"Chen, this is for you," he said, presenting her with a custom rifle case bearing her name and the insignia of every unit she trained with.
Inside was a precision rifle configured specifically for her size and shooting style, along with a letter signed by every instructor who had worked with her.
"This isn't a gift," Thompson explained. "This is recognition that you've earned your place among serious marksmen. Use it well."
Sarah was uncharacteristically emotional as she read the letter, which detailed not just her technical achievements but the inspiration she'd provided to everyone around her.
"Thank you," she managed to say. "All of you. This has been the most important experience of my life."
Colonel Steele watched this exchange with deep satisfaction. 6 months ago, he'd been skeptical about an unusual request from a determined child. Today, he was watching that same child receive recognition from some of the world's most elite soldiers, not because of her age or novelty, but because of her genuine excellence. "Sarah," he said as the gathering prepared to disperse, "you've proven something important here. You've shown that exceptional ability can emerge from anywhere and thrive under the right conditions. But, more than that, you've demonstrated that true excellence comes from character, not just skill. Sir, I hope other young people get the same opportunities I've had.
Not everyone who has talent gets the chance to develop it properly. That's exactly why this program will continue.
Your success has opened doors for others who might otherwise never get the chance to discover what they're capable of achieving." As Sarah packed her new equipment and prepared to leave, Colonel Steele reflected on the broader lessons of the past 6 months. Military institutions had always prided themselves on identifying and developing talent, but they had typically looked for it in traditional places and conventional packages. Sarah Chen had proven that exceptional ability could come in unexpected forms and that traditional barriers might actually prevent the military from accessing some of its most valuable potential assets. "Colonel," Sarah said as she prepared to leave, "there's something I want you to know."
"What's that?"
"When I first asked for this opportunity, I thought I just wanted to become a better shooter. But this experience taught me something more important. It taught me that when people believe in your potential and give you the resources to develop it, you become capable of things you never imagined. That's the most important lesson any of us can learn, Sarah. What you do with that knowledge will determine everything else." As he watched Sarah leave with her father, Colonel Steele knew that this remarkable young woman would continue to exceed expectations and break barriers throughout her life. But, more importantly, her success had created a template that would benefit other exceptional young people for years to come. The little girl who had walked into his office 6 months ago asking for a chance to prove herself had done far more than demonstrate her shooting ability. She had proven that excellence knows no boundaries and that the most unlikely students can become the greatest teachers. 3 years later, Sarah Chen would become the youngest person ever to win a national precision rifle championship. 5 years later, she would represent the United States in international competition while attending West Point on a full academic scholarship. But Colonel Steele would always remember her not for those future achievements, but for the quiet determination of a 13-year-old girl who understood that true excellence comes from character, dedication, and the courage to pursue your potential regardless of what others think is possible. The experimental program that began with Sarah's unusual request had evolved into a formal initiative for identifying and developing exceptional young marksmen from civilian backgrounds. Dozens of young people would benefit from the opportunities that her success had created. But none of them would ever quite match the combination of natural ability, work ethic, and character that made Sarah Chen extraordinary. She had proven that sometimes the most unlikely candidates become the greatest success stories, not because they demanded special treatment, but because they earned exceptional opportunities through exceptional effort. The colonel who initially doubted whether a 12-year-old girl belonged on military training ranges had learned that talent and determination could emerge from anywhere, and that his most important job was recognizing and nurturing excellence wherever he found it. Sarah Chen had taught everyone around her that the measure of a person isn't their age, size, or background, but their willingness to pursue excellence with everything they have. And, in doing so, she had honored her mother's memory while creating a legacy that would inspire others for generations to come.